Hi guys, welcome back to the Knitting Expat Podcast channel. My name is Mina and today I'm here to do a book review of the mini Amigurumi Animals book by Search Press. Sorry, the author is Sarah Abondio and it's printed by Search Press. So yeah, it's interesting. This wasn't actually because they asked me to select some books to review, and I've done one already on the Year of Granny Squares, and I picked a different book actually, but they sent me this one instead, and I'm actually kind of glad they did because I really enjoyed it. But here's the cover, all the little animals that are included in the book. So the book starts with your usual bits at the beginning. I like the fact that they don't spend too much time on like all the different stitches and techniques, and they don't, like, half the book isn't about materials and stitch techniques and stuff. So there's a little bit like a table of contents with little pictures of all the animals in the book. Then you just get a quick little page on materials and tools, and then the pattern notes about how they have the pattern written. I will say this book is entirely written using UK crochet terms rather than US crochet terms, which is what I'm more used to. So UK, for example, the US single crochet in the UK would be called a double crochet. So whenever the pattern in the book tells you to do a double crochet, it actually, it means a single crochet in the US. So there is that to be aware of. And there's one page on crochet techniques, which is good because what that tells me is there aren't a lot of crochet techniques that you need to know how to do in order to be able to complete the patterns in this book. And I will say the majority of the stitches that you do in this pattern are single crochets. There are very few other stitches. There are a couple of in the back loops, there are a couple of what they call a popcorn stitch, but it's like a bobble stitch. So there's very few other stitches that you do. Everything is mostly just single crochets. And increases and decreases in single crochet or double crochet in UK terms. So I went through, and the patterns are all written out quite clearly, very easy to follow. I did have a couple of critiques on the book, but it's nothing particularly terrible, and I can understand to some degree why they've done it this way, because it does reduce the number of pages needed. But it seems like a lot, if not all, of the patterns, a lot, it's not all of them actually, a lot of the patterns use the same instructions for the body. So other than the first pattern, every other pattern says refer back to the instructions on this page for how to make the body. So there is a bit of flipping back and forth within the book, and there are a couple of other body parts that are sometimes repeated amongst animals that they then would like refer you back to a previous page. So whilst it's not the end of the world, I do find that a little bit annoying, that you have to keep checking back and forth. But like I said, not the worst thing that you have to do. Then, so let's see. So I did 3 of the patterns in here, and these are all going to be gifts for Nova for Christmas. So the first one I did was the pig, which was and I did this one using the recommended yarn and needle size. So it recommends a DK yarn, and I think it was, I can't remember what needle size it recommended. Let me just double check. It says a 2.5mm crochet hook and fingering weight yarn, actually, sorry. I used a DK weight yarn that's actually quite thin. I'd say it's more like a sport weight, and I used 3.5mm needles. And so here's my little piggy. It's so cute. It's so tiny, and it was very fiddly, and it's a little bit wonky in the face, but it was very fiddly to kind of sew the different pieces together. So it is created in pieces, and you have to sew the bits together. Which wasn't too bad, but it was quite fiddly because it was so small. So this one, if I have a tape ruler or something around, I can tell you how big this one is. Right, so this little piggy is approximately about just over 4 inches tall if you count the tips of the ears. So it's quite small, it's very cute. Nova loves little piggies, she's really into Peppa Pig at the moment, and whenever she sees a piggy she makes the pig noises. She doesn't just go oink oink, she makes actual pig snorting noises, which is hilariously adorable. So she's gonna love this, hopefully. Then the next one that I made was the elephant, because I just thought it was so cute to make an elephant, and it's not because it's like a favourite animal of hers or anything. I just really wanted to make the elephant. And for this one I used Aran weight yarn, and so I used a larger needle size. What did I use? I think it was like a 5 or 5.5mm hook for this one. And here he is. He's adorable as well, and he's got the cute little tail, and he's got his big elephant ears and his elephant trunk. And this one was also really fun. This one I actually found easier to do because it was a little bit bigger, so sewing on the attachments and stuff, it wasn't as fiddly to get into the little bits and pieces to be able to do that. And this one is about 5 inches tall, so not much taller than Mr. Piggy. So these two go together. So after I'd done that, now bear in mind the book is written entirely for like fingering weight, sock weight yarn and 2.5mm needles, but it does say in the book as well that if you alter the size of the yarn and hooks that you use, you can get various sizes of animals. I'm just trying to find the page for the last one I made, and the last one I made was the mouse, which was really fun. This one had slightly different techniques. The body for this one was different than the other two, so it had different instructions for that. And this one I did using chunky yarn and much thicker needles, much bigger needles. I think I did this with an 8mm, might have been an 8mm hook. And this is the mouse. The mouse is adorable. This one was really fun because it was so big, and it crocheted up really quickly. I mean, they all did. None of these took me very long at all. The ears are really fun. This one's the biggest of them all, obviously, and this one's almost 8 inches tall. And I don't know why, but I get a bit of a kick out of the fact that the mouse is taller than the elephant. But yeah, so here is the whole set: the mouse, the elephant and the piggy. So yeah, I wanted to try it out. I wanted to try out more than one of the animals, and I wanted to try them in various yarn weights and sizes, and just see sort of like how they scale up. And I think they scale up pretty well. I actually really like this sort of size. I think this works really well. They are sort of like top heavy. They do have much bigger heads than their bodies, but all of mine, if you're careful with how you place the feet on the bottom, they do sit upright without constantly toppling over. The piggy is the hardest one to get to sit up, but it does sit up. Yeah, it can sit up on its own, as does the elephant. So I think with making sure that they sit up unaided, like on their own, you need to be careful with the placement of the feet so that they provide the right kind of like support when you try to sit them up. Anyway, so that's my experience with actually knitting, crocheting from this book. You can tell I'm a knitter first. In terms of criticisms, I already mentioned about how they write the patterns and with like the flipping back and forth on some pages. I do wish that they had, and this is personal preference. The other book that I reviewed, it had like a little flip out leaf at the back where you could flip it out and have it out while you're on any page in the book, and it has the conversion of US and UK crochet terms, so that way you're not constantly having to flip back to the front of the book to like double check what the conversion is. It's just right there whatever page you're on, and I thought that was really good, and I kind of feel like most crochet books ought to have that, especially ones that are aimed at more beginner level, which I do think this is. I do think this is a great beginner entry level introduction to toy making. I feel like it's very approachable. The instructions were very clear. You're never crocheting for like a bajillion rounds doing one thing. The things change up very quickly, so it feels like it goes by really fast. Like each of these animals, it really didn't take very long at all. I don't like seaming toys. I find it's really fiddly and it can get quite tedious, which is why I like the larger sizes. The larger the animal was, the easier it was to do the sewing. But again, that's just a personal preference more than anything else. There's nothing against it. And then, what was it? There was one other thing I was going to say. I think those were the main critiques I had for the book. Yeah, I didn't have any other issues with it. The instructions were all clear. Nothing turned out differently than I expected. Each of the animals look like the examples in the book. And like I said, I am a beginner to crochet. I'm not much of a crochet toy person. Like, I don't crochet toys. I don't knit toys either, not very often. I've only knit maybe 2 or 3 toys in my entire time knitting. I just don't like how fiddly and hard it can be on my wrists, because I do it's not exactly carpal tunnel, but I do get pain in my wrists if I knit at really tight gauges for too long. So I tend to stay away from stuff that requires that. And these toys, I don't think my gauge is tight enough on them. You can definitely see the stuffing through the animals. It's not necessarily the best density. You can probably really see it on the piggy, on the tummy there. Really see the stuffing through the gaps in my stitching. So, and in the mouse as well, you can sort of see the size of those holes. They're quite big. Nova thankfully is old enough, I'm not too worried about it. She's not likely to like get her finger in there and pull stuffing out or anything, but it's not the sort of toy I would give to a small child. For me, because of my gauge with crochet, there's nothing wrong with them, and they've all got safety eyes in them as well, which I had myself. So anyway, I really enjoyed this. I think this would be a great book for someone who's getting into crocheting animals. And the other thing I like about them, because they all follow a similar pattern in terms of like a lot of the bodies are the same instruction, they're very cohesive as a set. So if you're making more than one, especially if you're making them in the same size, they kind of look like they all go together. It's not like you're crocheting patterns from different pattern writers of different animals and they all kind of like, they don't look like a set, if that makes sense. These all look like a set. They all look like they belong together. So there's a certain cohesion there that I quite like as well about it. So I will, if my kids ever ask me for crochets or a stuffed animal that I make, I will definitely be referring back to this book. Oh, that's the other thing. My only other criticism is there's no instructions on how to crochet a sheep. I want a sheep. I wanted a sheep. There's no sheep. Yeah, I'd say that's the only negative I have to say about this, is all these cute animals and there's no sheep. Why is there no sheep? But anyway, that's just me being picky. All right, so thank you for joining me for this quick little video. There we go, little thumbnail photo there. And I will see you guys in Vlogmas in a couple of days. So till then, I will say goodbye.